Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1099B, and today's date is October 12th, 2016, and the title of the episode is U.S. Government War Plans Are in the Works, Next Event Around the Corner. Let's get into the economic collapse, political, and geopolitical news. Now, we have been watching the United States government central bankers prepare, get ready for war. We've been watching, we've been reporting on the movement of troops, military assets, the provocations against other countries, demonizing of other countries, pointing the finger without any proof to other countries. And we can see this is the war path the United States government central bankers are on. Now, I know the American people, the people throughout Europe, Canada, Australia, the everyday people, they don't want war. War is a horrible thing. People don't really recover from war for many years. Families are lost. People that you know are lost. And you can't get them back. There's no replay, there's no reset or anything like that. But the central bankers, the elite, they don't really care about that, because most of the time their families, themselves, they stay behind. They send everyone else. And of course, what we're seeing right now is the U.S. and other countries now, they're preparing for what is coming. We see U.S. and Chile, they've signed an agreement on deepening defense relations. We see Russia and Armenia, they're setting up a joint air defense system because they realize what the United States is planning, what the central bankers really want. And what is happening right now is that the entire plan the United States government central bankers had, it has fallen apart. Now remember, these individuals, they're not gods, they're everyday people. Most of them are morons. They make a lot of mistakes. And they don't realize, when to quit. They'll just keep going because they have a goal in mind. And they're taking orders from above. Who are these people above? Well, it's the Rothschilds and many others. It's a non-elect shadow government type of system. And we can see right now that they are pushing war as hard as they possibly can. Because what is happening in the Middle East, the United States is losing its grip. They're trying to get the grip back, but it's getting more and more difficult. So we can see that they're bringing in more equipment into this area. The U.S. Marine Corps is now equipped with a new combat surveillance drone as part of an upgrade of technology in Iraq. It's the RQ-21A Blackjack. And this is a small tactical unmanned air system. And what it does, it's used for reconnaissance, surveillance. It's used to identify potential targets. And it provides crucial information to troops on the ground. Because what they're doing in Iraq is that they're not fighting the Islamic State. The United States government central bankers, they know where the Islamic State is. Remember, they fund them, they support them, they give them tactical information. They're looking for those other individuals, those individuals that don't want the U.S. government in their country, those individuals that don't want the puppet government in their country, those individuals that are fighting to push the U.S. out and the puppet government out. This is why the United States government central bankers have been bringing in more and more troops into Iraq. And of course, some are being filtered into Syria because they realize they're losing their grip on that country. Because the Islamic State, they have about 10% of the land there. They've been almost wiped out there. And the people are saying, listen, we want our country back. And this is not just happening in Iraq. It's happening throughout all the Middle Eastern countries. And we see the United States government needs to get into Yemen. And, Yesterday, we reported that there was a missile that was fired at a U.S. destroyer, the U.S. Mason, and we see that the missile, of course, missed. This was a false flag, and they said, oh, it came from the Houthis, it came from that direction, and it came from the area of the country that is controlled by the Houthis. So, we're going to do something, and we're going to retaliate against the Houthis. Well, they didn't waste any time. The U.S. Navy fired missiles back at the Houthis into Yemen. This whole thing was staged. They had 2 warships out there, the USS Mason and the USS Ponce. Now, they are reporting now that there was another missile fired, but it also fell into the ocean and didn't hit these ships. If they're so concerned about the Houthis firing missiles at them, why don't they pull the ships back a little bit? They know there's a war going on because they're directing it. They're using Saudi Arabia, the paid mercenaries, to go after the Houthis. So they know what's going on there. Why are the ships in firing range? This was a complete setup because they need to get into Yemen. And the only way to get back into Yemen is to show the world that the United States government was attacked. And we can see already they fired missiles into Yemen. This is the first stage. And now you're going to see bombing runs occur inside of Yemen. Soon you'll see troops headed into Yemen. We're seeing it in Libya. They have special op teams already on the ground. We know there's special op teams in Yemen. We know there's special op teams in Iraq. And we know there's a lot of troops in Iraq. And there's special op teams in Syria. So the United States, they are in all of these countries trying to regain control of the Middle East. And we can see right now, these countries are fighting back. They don't want us there. This has nothing to do about providing them with freedom, democracy. This is about keeping the central bankers in power with their petrodollar system. That is it. Now, out in Syria, it has been very tough for the United States to get a handle on where the Syrian troops are, where the Russian troops are, where the Russian jets are, because Russia has set up their Krasuka 4 electronic shield system inside of Syria. And during the 12 months of operation in this area, they have been using this shield system, and it protects the airbase from various spy planes, including U.S. aircrafts flying over the Mediterranean Sea. The Russian system is also preventing the work of reconnaissance satellites, and if it is needed, it is also capable to suppress radars of sighting system of fighter jets. And we can see this makes it very tough for the United States government central bankers to know where everything is, and it kind of jams their system. And we see right now that the U.S., they are in big trouble in Syria because Russia right now has been invited in. We have to keep this in mind. Russia has been invited in by the elected president, by the people. It is a sovereign country. The United States invaded Syria, brought military troops into Syria and built 2 bases and put the American flag and raised it up in a sovereign country. The French are in there building a military base. Turkey has raised their flag and they are in this country. And of course, under the story that they're going after terrorism. And we know that Russia and Syria, the Syrian government, they have been destroying the terrorists. All the other coalition forces, they have a different objective. And we can see the United States is trying to use whatever they possibly can, whatever propaganda they have against Russia. War crimes, they're destroying the humanitarian aid. They're going down every route because each time they do this, they need to see if it works. I mean, they started out with Assad using chemical weapons against his own people, which makes no sense. If the people elected him as president, why would he turn around and use chemical weapons against the people that support him? It makes no sense whatsoever. And why would he use chemical weapons the same day he invited the UN inspectors in to inspect chemical weapons and their usage inside the country? Makes no sense at all. And this is why that story completely fell apart, and then we found out later that it was the rebels once again, actually the terrorist group controlled by the United States government central bankers. Putin is out there right now saying that the attack on the UN humanitarian aid convoy near the Syrian city of Aleppo, which was under the control of the terrorists, that was destroyed by the terrorists, and the U.S. knows this. They have drone footage showing that the terrorists were driving an armed vehicle right next to the convoy. It was in their area, and from all the evidence, it looks like it wasn't hit from the sky because there were no craters. It looks like they were set on fire. Now, the United States government central bankers, they do this quite often. You have to remember, the terrorists are made up of paid mercenaries. 99% of them are paid mercenaries. They're not even Syrian. They don't care about the people inside of Syria. And we can see that Russia is pointing at the U.S. saying, you know who did it. We know who did it. We have the evidence to prove that it wasn't us. And the U.S. has no evidence to show that Russia actually did it. Russia is also out there saying that they're trying to help the situation in Aleppo with the UN. The UN wants the terrorists to leave Aleppo, and they're saying that the terrorists are preventing Syrian civilians from leaving eastern Aleppo. They don't want them to leave because they use them as shields. They use them as cover. So we can see what is happening in Syria right now. The United States government central bankers, they are very desperate in this area right now. Russia, the Syrian government, they have the upper hand. As soon as they capture Aleppo, which is almost complete, that's it. They're done. Now Russia is saying, listen, let's have talks once again. We want to talk to the regional powers, Qatar, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, the United States. Let's talk about what is happening in Syria. Maybe we can come up with some type of political solution, which the United States government central bankers, they do not want a political solution whatsoever. Remember, this whole entire civil war is not a civil war. It's regime change, created, funded, supplied by the United States government central bankers. That's it. So we can see right now, we're coming to a period where we have a problem in Syria, a problem in the Middle East, a problem with the elections, and the entire economic system collapsing all at once. I mean, this is the perfect storm. So what is the U.S. government central bankers doing at this point? Well, they're convincing the American people, they're convincing the world that the elections, we might have a problem with them. They could be postponed because of cyber attacks from Russia. If Trump wins somehow, some way, well, then the elections are a fraud. And we need to stop them, look at what's going on, and see if there was a cyber attack. We know that the DHS is now taking control of the elections. Now, all of this is being done, all this propaganda is being hyped up because this is their plan B. Because as we know, there's a certain point where they can manipulate these numbers. I mean, if the election numbers come out and they're completely far apart, they're going to have a very difficult time manipulating it and having the person win who they want to win. At this point, if it's close, they will use the cyber attack. They will stop the elections one way or another. If they can manipulate it, there's no reason to do it. But they are prepping the American people to understand and to realize that there could be a cyber attack against the election system. Now, while all this is going on, we can see that the U.S. is getting ready to launch some type of an attack against the Syrian army very soon. Remember, their backs are against the wall. They're losing Aleppo. They're going to be forced out of Syria. They can't regain their grip in the Middle East. And once this occurs, the entire system crashes down very quickly, because this whole system was built on the petrodollar. And once it does collapse, everyone will point the finger at the U.S. government central bankers. Because remember, they've been telling us that the economy's fine. We're recovered. So the Pentagon right now, they're considering carrying out limited attacks in Syria against the Syrian army. They're going to try to help the terrorist groups. And we can see right now that they're not going to announce this publicly, that, oh, look, we're flying in, we're going to be bombing the Syrian army. They're going to be doing this hoping that nobody notices. Now, while they're doing this, we might see some type of an event occur to cover up what is happening. Now, last time they flew in, they hit the Syrian armed forces, and they needed an event quickly afterwards because it started to get out of hand. It was all over the corporate media. It was all over the world, and we can see the plan went south. So they needed a bombing in many different locations to distract everyone. This time, I believe we're going to see the event before they carry out the attack, or it will happen simultaneously at the same exact time. Because in Syria right now, they really have no other choice. They can't go down the route of a ceasefire or peace deal. It doesn't benefit them. When I say them, it's the United States government central bankers, the terrorist groups. It doesn't benefit their mission. Their mission is to remove Assad. It's always been the same. So the only thing that will benefit them is hitting the Syrian army, hitting them hard, and letting the terrorist groups take over Aleppo. And they know if the word gets out that this is happening, the American people, Congress, they're all going to look at this and say, wait a minute, we're attacking Syria right now? That's an act of war. Now, you can do this once where you say it's a mistake, but you can't do it twice. So it looks like they're going to need some type of an event to say this is why they needed to do this, an event to cover it up. But we can see right now they're becoming so desperate because of what is happening with the economy, with the elections, and they're getting nervous and worried that if they don't do this soon, they are going to lose the opportunity to do it again. Because once Aleppo is completely taken over by Syria and Russia, there is no reason for the United States government central bankers to even be in Syria. Because you know the next step is Russia and Syria saying, please leave Syria now. You are in a sovereign country. We don't need you anymore. We never needed you in the first place. You're here illegally. Now, what is the United States going to do? Say, no, we're not leaving because we didn't get Assad? No, they're going to have to leave. So they're never going to let it get to that point. They're going to do something, and it's going to start war. Get prepared for this next event. Most likely, it'll be happening in a couple of weeks. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.